If you own a Bronco, you've probably noticed two things. The factory lighting leaves a lot to be desired, and unless you splurged for a higher trim, charging your camera or phone while using the dash accessory mount can be a hassle. I know I was tired of the dim interior and the mess of charging cables sprawled from the bottom of my dash to the top. That's why I'm excited to share these 5 amazing accessories that Mabit sent over that will completely transform your Bronco's interior. We'll be installing a multicolored dash light that looks like a factory part, a USB expansion dock that keeps your phone and cameras charged, and 3 different LED light upgrades that'll make your interior brighter than ever. The best part? Everything's plug and play and relatively easy to install with basic tools and requires no permanent modifications. Even if you've never done mods before, you can definitely install these. The first thing we're going to be doing is replacing this in our dash. So once we have this installed, it actually does have a power button right here, so we could turn it on, turn it off. You don't always have to run with the ambient lights in your Bronco, and you can cycle through the lights that it offers to find the perfect lighting for the interior of your Bronco. So let's get started with the install. I'm really excited to see how it looks. So the first step to installing this piece is actually to go ahead and drop this panel down here. All you really need is some plastic pry tools, so that's what we're going to be starting with. Now, every time I've done this, one side is always really easy to pop off and the other side is a little bit more stiff or trickier. So I'm just gonna kind of keep working the pry tool in on this side right here until I find the right spot to go ahead and get it to pop off. There we go. The next step is to go ahead and remove this 7mm bolt right here. This is to go ahead and drop the AC control panel. And there's actually 2 bolts right up here. Now you want to remove the one that is on the left-hand side. Going to be removing this grab handle right here. Now I am using the TP30 tool from my Bronco toolkit. We're going to be using some pry tools to go ahead and get right up in here on the side to go ahead and wiggle it down. Really just want to get the pry tool right up against where those clips are. Try to get it under the hook or under the clip to pop it out. I'm going to open up the glove compartment again because piece of the plastic right here is firmly underneath that glove compartment, so you don't want to get that stuck. Now we're going to work on removing this piece right here. So the next step is to go ahead and remove about 4 7mm bolts that's holding this piece into place. One of them is going to be behind this AC panel. The other 3 are going to be where your glove box is. Now there should be 3 panels covering them that you can go ahead and remove using a pry tool. For some reason mine doesn't have those panels, so my bolts are actually exposed. But if you have those panels, a plastic pry tool will work to get them off. So the next step is to go ahead and actually remove this panel here. So once I got this corner piece off right here, or this clip, I can actually see where the next clip is located. So I'm going to try to go clip by clip to go ahead and remove it. There it is. So now I'm going to be unplugging the start button. There is a switch on this side that you just need to push in as you pull out. So we just went ahead and pushed the button out, and now we need the bezel piece as well. Now there's a few clips on the back holding it into place. You just go ahead and push those in, and then the bezel will pop right out. The areas you need to push are right here. There is one here, here, and then one on the other side. Go ahead and take the button and the bezel and put it into the new piece right here, making sure to line up all of the holes to make sure it goes in smoothly. The next step is to go ahead and take the red wire that comes with this piece, and they do include a fuse tap. So you're going to be taking this red wire. I folded it in on itself a little bit and wrapped it around, and then I'm going to go ahead and stick that piece inside right there. From here, I'm going to go ahead and use a pair of pliers to crimp it and to hold that wire in place. I'm going to go ahead and plug back in the push to start button, making sure I align all of the pieces correctly. The next step is to go ahead and install the fuse tap into the fuse box. So the recommended fuse it asks you to tap into is actually fuse number 2.
However, we already used fuse number 2 for my signal wire for my subwoofer.
We're actually going to use number 35. This is a 5 amp fuse and it is not used for anything else. So it's going to probably be the best spot for our fuse tap. These fuses were already pre-installed, so I don't have to worry about putting the old fuse into the fuse tap. I'm just going to go ahead and install it. We are going to go ahead and ground our ground wire. Now, the way we're going to do this is we are going to use a bolt that we've previously used before. You could wrap this wire around the bolt, putting it back in, and that way you don't have to actually remove the bolt. However, we happen to have one of these right here, and I prefer to have it a little bit more secure, so we're going to be using this. I do know that the color is red, and we're using it for a black ground wire. However, the color does not matter. Now, to remove the bolt that we're going to ground it to, you could use an 8mm if that's all you have. However, we found that the 5/16 was a perfect fit. So we just went ahead, crimped this on the ground wire, and now it is ready to put onto the bolt. Now we're going to be securing this piece back into place using our 7mm bolts that we took out earlier. Now we're not going to finish reassembling everything on the inside of the Bronco just yet because we're going to actually have to remove those pieces for our new USB hub. We're going to be installing this up at the top where our original mount accessory is. The first step is to go ahead and remove 2 bolts that actually hold in the original mount up here. Now, this is kind of tricky because of where it is, you can't really get a good view of it. So what we're using is we're using a teensy tiny little socket wrench, and we went ahead and put a T20 on an extension to be able to remove it. Now this is going to take some time because, like I said, you can't see it. So now I'm going to go ahead and work on prying this piece out, which should be easy once those bolts are removed. I'm just going to be using some pry tools to go ahead and lift this up. So now I'm just going to go ahead and set it aside. There's no need to unplug it. If you weren't installing the ambient lighting, then you would have to remove the small panel that's down here. The reason for this is because you are going to be popping off this center console piece, and that would be the first step before being able to pop this off. You would also normally have to remove your grab handle as well. So we are set to go ahead and start pulling up the center console. You want to make sure that your shifter is in neutral. It does allow you to be able to lift this up a little bit more, which later when we have to access the wires behind the USB, it's going to make it a lot easier. So now we're going to go ahead and unplug the USB that is from the factory. It is a little bit of a tight squeeze, but there is a lever that you pull up and then you pull it out, just like that. This is going to be a splitter that we're going to be installing so that way we can keep the factory USB as well as power the new USB. Now this piece is originally attached to the new USB hub. We just went ahead and unplugged it to make it a little bit easier to plug in for us. From here, I'm going to go ahead and plug this in. Now we're going to go ahead and install the hub and run the wires down to these. So now the next step is to go ahead and get this into place so I can run the wire down. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take the wire and I'm going to run it through here and grab it really quickly. I'm going to go ahead and just pull it all the way through, and I'm going to align this. I'm not necessarily going to screw it in just yet, but I want to make sure it's aligned where it's supposed to be. So right now I am taping the wire to a stiff wire to be able to run it easier. I tried to do it without the wire and it wasn't going the way I wanted it to go. So we're going to go ahead and use this guy to help guide it. Now I'm going to go ahead and drop this down beneath the AC panel. So now it's down here. Okay, that one's in. So now I can go back under and connect this back to the factory USB, making sure it's all the way in. So we tested everything, it's working great, which means now we can go ahead and reassemble everything we tore apart. I'm gonna go ahead and bolt in the new USB hub before I move on to putting everything back. Push it into place until I hear all the clicks. Now I'm gonna go ahead and put the AC panel back. Now we're gonna move back to the top here. I'm gonna go ahead and place my hero switches back in place. The next thing we're going to be installing is these interior dome lights, which are actually really easy to install because they're plug and play to the reading light that's already in your Bronco. So the first step is to go ahead and actually remove this light right here. There we go. The next thing we have to do is go ahead and unclip this light. Just like all other plugs that we deal with in vehicles, it has a push pin, and then once you push it in, you should be able to pull it right out. We want to go ahead and remove this clip right here. It's just going to give us a little bit more space to be able to pull down the panel to be able to run the wiring through it. So I'm just using that metal pry tool again. The next thing we're going to be doing is removing the bolts that's holding in the trim panel pieces that covered the airbag on the roll bar. I'm using an 8mm socket. Don't worry, the grab handles will be going back on after we install the lights. Now we're going to be doing the same thing on the passenger side. So I'm going to be removing these side panels right here. Now these side panels do sit on top of this back panel back here. There are held in with clips, meaning that there is going to be some resistance. But once you get it started, you should just be able to go like that. Now listen. If you don't want to remove it completely, you don't have to. You can leave it hanging like this because this is going to give you the access that you need to run the wire out of the way of the airbag. I'm now going to go ahead and just pull off this panel. This guy does come off easier than the back one. So now we're going to be working with the wiring harness. Now, the wiring harness in the middle has these two gray plugs. One is going to go into where your reading light was plugged in, and the other side is going to go back into your reading light if you're going to be putting the same reading light back. We're going to be doing something different, so that's going to be unplugged for the time being. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in the factory plug to this wiring harness right here. Now I have two sides of this wire. One is going to run to one side, the other is going to run to the other. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take this wire. I'm actually going to feed it in through here. Now, this being mostly off helps me because I can go ahead and actually grab it with my fingers, just like that. Pull it through just to help it feed through correctly and easy without having to worry about having to like get an extra wire to help run it or anything like that. And I'm actually going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side since I'm here. I'm going to go ahead and run this through. Again, pulling this open. You can see that I'm not taking it off. I'm just running it up to my finger to then help guide it through, and then we'll tuck it cleanly under. You don't want this wire to be over your airbag. So you do want to make sure it runs on the top. And then once it's here, you could use tape or something. Just make sure that you don't tape it to the airbag if you feel like you need it to be more secure. Once you put the panel on, there's really no room for this wire to be wiggling around. So it is pretty safe, but if you would prefer to use tape, you can. Just kind of realign the panel. And then I can actually work on popping this back into place, making sure I have the wires where I need them to be. So as I was putting this back on, I did realize that the front piece does actually go underneath the back piece, so I do recommend you put on that piece first. So we are running into an issue where the front panel that we removed is actually getting blocked by the freedom panels in the front. So we're going to be removing these freedom panels really quick to go ahead and give us the space that we need to work. What I had to do to be able to get that piece back on is I had to go in at an angle. Now that we have it in place, I can go ahead and push this guy up and put it back in place. Before I go ahead and plug in and bolt in the lights, there is a bit of wire exposed right here. You will see a little bit of the wire up and over the panels. So you do want to make sure that if it's going to bother you, you work on taping it. So that's what I'm going to be doing, using some electrical tape just to cover the extra wire. So next what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead, take this light right here, and you're going to plug it into the harness that I have sticking out. And then I'm just going to tuck that piece right there until I see that's where it's going to sit. Hand tighten it just to hold it in place. So now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing on this side, plugging it in. So if you have the grab handles like I do, I see a lot of Bronco owners having these ones. You can go ahead and just put these right over the light before you go ahead and secure it. That way you have both of your accessories in one place ready to go. Now that those are in, I'm going to go ahead and put all of the bolts back in on this side. Now we're going to do the same thing on the passenger side. I did just finish the passenger side. One note to keep in mind, when you are reinstalling the bolts, you do want to make sure that you don't accidentally pinch the wire or anything, because that can cause interference with your lights. We're going to go ahead and put back in the clip that we took out, and that'll secure all the panels back into place, including the back one. I will tell you, this reading light was so dim, I didn't even know it was back here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to tuck in these wires from those lights we just included. And now what we have is we have a new, bigger reading light right here. Now this guy is super easy to install. All we're gonna do is plug in this plug right here, peel off the tape, and then we're gonna go ahead and secure it like that. And it actually looks factory with the same texture as the roll bar and everything. I actually feel like it looks nice. I feel like it looks factory, and I feel like nobody would know the difference if I didn't tell them. And like I said, that one's really easy to install. So if you didn't want to do the other side lights, but you wanted to do the reading light, you could, super easy, probably take you about 10 minutes. The last thing we're going to be doing is installing a rear cargo light. Now what this is going to do is when my tailgate is up, like you see right now, this will actually shine a light down from it and providing light inside the cargo as well as right outside, which is perfect if you've seen our other camping video where we had that SUV tent. It'd provide an extra light in the tent, which is fantastic. We are going to be starting this project by removing this piece right here. This cover is just held in by clips, so you should be able to just pull it off or use a pry tool if it's a little bit more resistant. Okay. Oh. Attach this guy right up here. Now it does have to go in a certain way. Okay. So now, unlike the other, which clipped in, this is not clip in. The way that this works and the way that it stays in is with these bolts that are provided, as well as a hex key that's provided. So I'm going to go ahead and install these. Just a note really quickly, we did have trouble with the second bolt right in here. It wasn't wanting to catch the screw that's underneath it. We took out the first bolt that we put right here, because that gave us flexibility to be able to move the light to really align the hole with the screw. Once we did that, we were able to get it. It's definitely something that takes a little bit of persistence, and now that it's in, we're ready to move on to the next step. To start, we're just gonna go ahead and just tuck the wire. There's a space right in here that has almost like little clips. It makes it perfect to hide that wire along the glass. I'm going to be putting the wire clips right along this black line right here. So now that that's secured there, I'm actually gonna go ahead and I'm gonna end up lifting the tailgate, just because when I zip tie this wire, I wanna make sure I give it enough room to be able to move when the tailgate is open, because now we're gonna be zip tying this wire to the wire that is already there. I'm gonna lift it out to try to hide the wire underneath it the best that I can, just to try to give us a cleaner look. This piece is meant to obviously unplug, because if you decide to take off your hardtop, this is gonna go with it. So this plug actually goes into your 12 volt right here. So now we're on the final step, which is to go ahead and put in these little plugs right into the hole that those bolts went into earlier, just for aesthetics. This button right here is your power button, which is fantastic. It's not actually a button like you need to push in. All you have to do is touch it, and it turns your light on. The cool thing about this is not only is it providing light to right here in front of the tailgate, it also has a little light on the other side that provides light into the cargo area, which is pretty cool. That's a wrap on this Maybach accessory install. Everything went smoothly, and I'm really happy with the added functionality and style. The only thing I wish is that the ambient light dash piece came in a more factory-like color. If you're thinking about giving your Bronco's interior a boost, definitely check out these accessories in the link in the video description. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our dashcam installation guide for the Ford Bronco. Just click this video right here to see how easy it is to install and protect your ride. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye, guys.